Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me.
I'm Phil, partner at Webisoft. We build custom software. My guest today is Kevin Jaffe. Kevin, do you want to take a couple minutes just to introduce yourself, who you work
Sure.
with?
So I'm Kevin Jaffe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-owner of Mopica Products, LLC out of Texas. I'm a technologist of, I'm going to just say 30 something years because I don't want to give the exact number. I'm going to feel older if I do.
It's
Um,
more than that.
yeah, yeah. But my whole background is mainly technology and mechanical engineering, which is my educational background. But yeah, that's who I am.
So, in your current role at the company, what takes up most of your time?
Honestly, what takes up most of my time is really strategically navigating the business. We don't. I don't subscribe to a standard methodology in business. I kind of think of us more as like guerrilla warfare. Every single day, it's new challenges. Every single day, new decisions. Right. And I think in order to be in a position where we are today, which is we're a differentiator, at least we believe that we are in our industry, and we're bringing products that are impactful and changing how we do business, we've got to think outside the box. We have to constantly push the envelope and try new things. So that is not a set it and forget it kind of strategy. That's something that's very hands on and needs to be course corrected almost on a daily basis sometimes. It's I kind of use the example, it's like whitewater rafting. You got the direction, you're going down river, but you can't stop there. You've got to continue to paddle, and every single time you turn a bend or whatever, there's something new, right? So that would I would say is what takes up a lot of my time.
Would you say you're opportunity driven as a company?
Sometimes, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities that come to us. Some of them are worthwhile investing in, and some are not. We've played two types of games in our industry where we have a very loyal following from customers who will come with ideas and what have you, and we'll sit and evaluate them. But at the same time, where Mopica has really kind of made its name is that we've come up with products that no one's thought of. So
Mm.
it's also thinking outside the box and trying to understand really how the industry works. What are the suboptimalities, as we like to refer to them as, in the industry that people have just come to accept? And can we come up with products that no one's ever even thought of, but everybody wants, right? And so it's not always opportunity driven that's laid at our feet. Sometimes we have to create those opportunities, even when people don't realize that they need something.
Do you think that's harder to do in oil and gas compared to other industries?
No, actually, I don't. I actually think it's easier. I've done my time in the finance world. I've been in Wall Street area of New York City. I've been in oil and gas. I've been software development. I've been with consulting firms. Done lots of different things. I think this is probably one of the more opportunity ripe industries. And the reason I say that is that historically, for gas and fuel industry, we're creatures of habit. I've learned.
Hmm.
People tend to do something and they're like, this is how I was taught, or this is how my dad did it, and this is how my grandfather did it, and this is just how I'm going to do it. Very rarely do we see people starting to ask the question of, well, why am I doing it this way? Is there a
Yeah.
better way to do something? So I would tell you there's way more opportunities in our industry because of that mindset where people have just accepted the,
Hmm.
the pain of different things and saying, well, that's just the pain of doing business, right? That's just something I have to do and not question it. So I think it's somewhat easier.
So it's easier to come up with innovation ideas, but probably a little harder to get them through, right?
That I would agree with. And,
Yeah.
and I think that for the same method, the same mindset that's creating the opportunities is also the same mindset that is resistant to new
Hmm.
opportunities, right? If I had to think about the gas and fuel industry, when I came into it for the first time, I immediately said, "Hey, we're 8 years behind what I would consider the rest of the world. As most verticals in terms of technology adoption, um, automation, integrated systems. Like these were all words that nobody really used because they weren't something that people were embracing. It was very old school, very mindset driven, very locked in their ways." But now what we're seeing is we're seeing younger generations of people moving in to the fuel industry who are taking over businesses or moving up in the ranks, who technology has been a core of their lives since birth, right? And so now they're asking the questions like, well, why can't I have it on my phone? Why can't I do this? Why do I have to do paper? Why can't, So they're starting to ask the questions, which is good. So I kind of tell people when we talk about things like this that I think the industry is going through a technology revolution right now. It's in the beginning stages, in the first third of that,
Hmm.
where people are now starting to ask questions. We've always seen, um, more of a corporate mindset when we start talking about the bigger players, the Ferrells, the Suburbans, the AmeriGases, those type of people, where they have more corporate structure, more dedicated IT, and more people designed around analytics and understanding strategy. But when we look at the fuel industry as a whole, you've got your big four, and then you've got everybody else, and everybody else really is bigger, right? When you look in them collectively, and there's more opportunity there, and they're the ones now who are really starting to wake up and realize that, look, in order for me to survive long term, or in order for me to increase the value of my business, if your exit strategy is I'm going to sell it and go off into the
Mm.
sunset, these companies are now looking to have to adopt technology, whether they believe in it or not.
For a new product to go to market in oil and gas, like someone has to have kind of validated it. Like I think yesterday, what was the saying? Everybody wants to be first to be second, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
So do you think there's an opportunity for kind of younger, smaller companies that are more nimble to come up with new technology, prove it, and then get acquired by those bigger and companies?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if you've been following the industry for the last 2.5 years, we've had what I call the great consolidation, right? And it's still
Mm.
ongoing. Every single day I get on LinkedIn or I look at one of the industry magazines, and there's somebody who's bought somebody, right? So we're seeing a lot of people get out of the industry. We're seeing a lot of consolidation going on. However, we're seeing, and we have partners who do a lot of the brokering of these M&A acquisitions. How do the buying company evaluate technology in the previous company? And it's actually rated quite high. So when you see a Suburban or some of these other players out there who are buying people up, they're looking for an organization, one that not only has good customer service, solid balance between automatic and will call, but
Hmm.
they're also looking for companies that are streamlined and efficient, right? Because nobody wants to buy a book of business that is just heavily manual, heavily, human dependent. So they're looking at companies that are along that glide path. So I think it's easier for smaller companies, ones to do the proof of concept for
Yep.
themselves, right? If they're looking to get acquired. But at the same time, I think a lot of the smaller companies, because they're so nimble, they're able to, one, do customer service better than anybody else because they're
Hmm.
local, they're nimble, they're agile, they know their customers very, very well. But they're also realizing in order to compete with the bigger players that are moving into their markets and doing their competition, it's going to be about efficiency, right? It's not going to be about, hey, can I get gas cheaper? It's not going to be about, can I lower the maintenance on my trucks? This is just, it is what
Yeah.
it is, right? So, where do you look for efficiencies? Well, that's where you start looking for automation, you start looking at integration, and then you start looking at changing traditional roles and doing more oversight and less manual tasks.
Mm, very interesting. So in your company, what does a typical mandate look like?
Well, I don't know if I can say we have a typical mandate, right? Because when we go into any customer who engages with us, it's going to be about what their problem is, right? So one thing that I think our industry is resistant to is anybody coming in and trying to tell them how to run their business, right?
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
Immediately will get a roadblock, right? It's more about listening. So when we come into a customer and we talk about what is the value proposition, right? It really comes down to, talk to us about how you run your business. Talk to us about what your vision is. Where do you want to, see your business grow? And help us understand that first. And then based on the answers from there, then we can talk about how we as a company and our products and our people can come to bear to help you achieve that goal, right? We build our products and our software in a way where it supports best practices, right,
Hmm.
for the industry. And then there's best practices and then there's good practices. And let's just get clear on what those definitions are for your listeners. So, best practices are the cutting edge practices that a company will use, right? And very few companies will adopt best practices. It's a very small percentage. It averages between 5 and 10%. And then there's people that are below that are doing a subset of those, and those are good practices, right? And then what happens is over time, those best practices move down to good practices, and those good practices move down to things off the page, and new things come in, right? And that's
Hmm.
the evolutionary process of improving stuff. Way we build our stuff is based on best practices, but at the same time, it's still flexible enough, or we remain flexible enough to still be able to incorporate some of the processes and procedures that our customers historically want to keep using, right?
Hmm.
It's not our job necessarily to tell them they're doing something wrong, but it is our job as partners to help them understand what their options are and the benefits of those different decisions. And then the hopes is that the customer will come to the conclusion on what is the best option for them and move forward with it.
Can you give me an example of a situation like that?
Yeah, so we had a customer once. We've actually had quite a few where we talk about and I'll just take our propane sensors or fuel sensors for an example, right? And I tell customers if you're buying sensors for your tanks for the pure fact of just knowing, oh, I need to know when they're at 25% so I can deliver,
Yeah.
I will tell the customer I think you're missing the real rub. The real rub should be because you know what's in that tank, how does that change how you operate? Right?
Hmm.
That's the question I want marketers to really be asking themselves. This particular example, we were talking about dynamic routing and we were talking about just in time delivery and getting up their ideal drop percentages. And so, get out, deliver less, but drop more fuel. Less deliveries, more fuel.
More efficient.
Yep. The customer didn't understand the one having the sensors talk to the back office talk to the routing package that's in the truck. If they even had one, they didn't have one. They were still using maps, laminated cards sitting in the cabs. They were still using, carbon copy handwritten notes, drop off tickets and the whole nine. Part of our conversation was, look, if you can automate this stuff, not only having the sensors talk to your back office so that dispatch doesn't have to sit there and look at it. They can say, hey, I can see what's already being loaded for the truck today. And instead of doing a static route that you're doing first Tuesday of every month, guess what? I'm only putting this much fuel on the truck because that's all I'm going to be delivering today. And if I only deliver to 4 or 5 people in this area, so be it. It's getting away from that mindset of my truck goes out full, my truck comes back empty, because if you stop off at 30 extra places to drop 15 gallons here, 40 gallons there, whatever, that's not an efficient play. It really isn't, and we've proven that. But in this particular case, we showed it beyond a shadow of a doubt with numbers, what have you. It wasn't enough to get them to buy into the dynamic routing at that time. Um, they did buy into though the fact of, and because of you using sonar sensors, which is what we do, and we have the highest accuracy rate in the industry right now compared to any competitor on the market. Sonar is plus or minus 1% of actual in the tank. And we don't use floats and gauges. We use sonar shooting from the bottom of the tank. So we don't have a dependency on some mechanical devices. We're completely digital, but they were able to buy into the fact of, like, instead of having my flag go off at 25% to start delivering, I can have my flag go off at 17 or 16 because of that level of accuracy now, which means I know that if it goes off at 17, I'm either at 16 or 18, and that means I can deliver to the customer between 10 and 15%, right? And therefore I am at least getting the efficiency of I'm dropping more fuel when I come out, right? However, the conversation was also a phased approach. It is also very tough to get a marketer who is not familiar with automation, who isn't talking about integration, who does have some of what we'll call historical habits, right?
Hmm.
to get them to buy into a full package, right? Day one. That's a real tough thing. So the idea is take baby steps, get them to get on the technology, see the benefits of, hey, I can now, I'm coming out less and I'm dropping more fuel. Then you get to the next stage of, okay, let's integrate this thing, right? Then we get to the next stage of, okay, well, if I could show you beyond a shadow of a doubt, and we've done studies. We did a study of 60 marketers across the US, and they were small marketers. 4,500 units in the field was the average of all 60 when we came back in 120 days of just monitoring what they did on just the handful of tanks that we got from each one. We showed that if you went from the 25% flag down to 17, the average savings was around 14,148 deliveries a year.
Yeah, it's
That's a
crazy.
lot. And so when you start actually quantifying something
Yeah.
to a marketer, it becomes more impactful. So where is that marketer today? That marketer bought into the technology and saw the value in seeing what's in there and knowing the accuracy and having that control. Then you build that trust, and then it's like, hey, well, okay, talk to me more about the integration part. So let's start getting it integrated into your back office, and let's talk about automation. So maybe you can work with less people, or you have more bandwidth with the people you have to do more business, right? So that's where the conversation goes, and that's where we are today with that customer. But we've seen it all different stages of this, technology adoption phase, right? But very rarely, unless somebody has been around enough and has worked with or has friends who are other marketers who have seen what other people are doing as an example and trust those people, most of our conversations go this way.
Yeah, phased approach is the way to go in software as
Absolutely.
well, right?
Yeah,
And it's also kind of you kind of validate the process. You validate, that the solution works instead of yeah.
we're asking customers to invest a lot of money. And we as an industry, and I don't care if it's this one or anybody other industry, they talk about what the ROI is, right? Here's the
Yep.
paper, it shows the ROI, but you know what? That's great on paper. But I truly believe that we're kind of a show me kind of industry. I
Hmm.
need to see it myself. I need to experience it myself.
Hmm.
So building that trust, building that bond, building that track record is important to moving that phased approach along, right? Especially when you're talking with small marketers where cash is tight. They don't have money to waste, which means that when they do make an investment, they need to be extra sure that they're going to get their money's worth.
Needs to
Or
be impactful. Yeah.
exactly.
What would be an outdated process that you're still stuck with?
Us personally, or we think for the industry.
Let's go with both.
um, so for us, and I don't know if it's an outdated process, at least from our perspective, it may be seem outdated from the outside looking in. But I would tell you one of our processes, which is not as automated as it probably could be, but I think it's more, once again, a confidence factor. When we do our own manufacturing, I think we're one of the few in the industry where we own our own manufacturing facilities. So everything from
Mm,
beginning to end, Mopica owns. It's our people building it, our people supporting it. We don't outsource anything, not even our development, design,
really?
engineering,
Wow.
nothing.
Okay.
Everything is internal, which we're very proud of.
Just an aside. Why?
Why? Because that's really the only way we know how to control the quality, right?
Mm,
And one of the things that, when we talk to our customers and we truly believe ourselves is, I can come to you, Phil, and say, look, as a vendor for you, I'm going to make your problems my problems, right? And
hmm.
and they're just as important to me as they are to you. Guess what? That's a big fat lie. I may mean it emotionally, but subconsciously we solve our own problems differently than we solve problems for other people. So when I thought about why we don't outsource, it's not just a control factor, but it's also, we know that if we control all the pieces of the line, the production line from beginning to end, with our people who understand what our vision is and they're all bought into that vision, we know that it is going to be important to them and they will be solving the problems the way we want to be solving problems, right?
Mm,
So I think one of the, going back to your first question, one of the things that I think we're a little stuck in, but I like the way it is is that we do second and third level of testing of all our equipment. So we test it when it's at the manufacturing site. So when it comes off the assembly line, we have a very robust testing process. When it comes to a warehousing facility, we test it again. But we do it more manual that way. When manufacturing, we have digital testers, whatever, because when you're rolling thousands of units off on the line, that can be very tough to stop and test every single one of them. That's just not practical.
Yeah.
But when we actually start getting things out to our holding facilities, our warehouses globally, we have a team then that also goes and will grab sensors randomly from each order and test them manually from beginning to end. And it's more hands-on. It's more to replicate what our customers will experience. And it's kind of overkill, I believe, but at the same time, it makes sure that we sleep well at night, right? We have less than 1% failure rate on any equipment that goes out to the field. And in a world where you're talking to, once again, going back to the smaller marketers where money is important, they need to get value for their dollar. Nobody wants to buy something that is substandard in its materials, substandard in its reliability, so that we want people to feel good about what they bought, that they bought a quality product, a quality service that works as intended, as it's supposed to be, and it's reliable. So I think that is probably a little bit more old school. There are people who say, hey, you can automate that too, and you can set up new testers and have electronic stuff do that. Yeah, we could do all that. But at the same time, I still think it keeps us tight to our roots. It keeps our employees tight to, and as a reminder of like what it is that we do here and why we do it.
And why quality is important.
And why quality is important. So I would tell you that would be one thing where, internally. Externally, when we're talking about, customers out there, I think one of the biggest hurdles that we're seeing marketers, just starting to figure out now is getting away from static routes to dynamic routing and really understanding the differences and what the efficiencies really mean. What do those things really look like? And sometimes they're very tough to quantify and qualify until you have some data, right? Which is why we go out and do studies and whatnot. But I think that's probably one of those things where, we've gotten by the integration part into your back office. We've gotten by you need a back office to, do dispatch and do this and do that. It's the next big real push will be more about, dynamic routing. I think is going to be that big topic. But that's the thing that if I had to nail one thing up there for you, it would be that thing.
Okay. I haven't heard that one yet.
Hey, glad I could come up with something new for you.
What do you see as the most exciting innovation coming to the industry in the next couple of years?
Well, I can tell you about one of ours, and then I can talk a little bit about what I think from a generalized perspective. So I think one of the biggest game changers that's on the market now, and not just to toot our own horn, as we've all in the fuel business have seen, whether it be on social media or in the news, there always seems to be a home explosion someplace. And it's because of TikTok and Instagram and everything. Everybody's got a phone. Everyone's a reporter. We see these things, and they don't bode well for the industry as a whole. What we have done is we've come up with a first of its kind patented cathodic protection monitor that replaces manual testing on underground tanks. This gives the marketer peace of mind. So it's compliance as a service in a way. But what it'll do is it'll let you do all your required testing that you have to do for an underground tank, and keep that for federal and state regulators. It will also be acceptable to all your insurance providers. It will lower your risk, but it also turns around and protects the homeowner, and gives the marketer what I would call a little bit more of a control in terms of servicing those tanks. Because in the past, if you got a failing read, and by the way, it could be a false positive or whatever, it didn't matter. The marketer had to address whatever that was for the underground tank. But now with our technology, it allows the marketer to be more planful. It's no longer drop what I'm doing and go and have to, service something. Our product kind of lets the marketer know, like, look, this is something you're going to have to address 12 to 18 months out. which would give the marketer an opportunity to say, look, okay, I'm not going to disrupt my operation today. And now that I know I have to do this in the next year, now I can be more planful about it. I'm going to schedule it when we have some downtime, when it's not impacting revenue generating services. Um, so that is probably, I think, the biggest, thing right now for us. And I think it's going to be solving a problem that the industry as a whole is really now coming to have to deal with. I mean, if you've been following the news, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had an operations manager of a propane company get found guilty of criminal charges because of negligence on an underground tank that ended up exploding and causing loss of life and damage and what have you. And we're seeing that a lot of marketers out there have been playing the roulette game of like, look, I'm partially compliant. Well, there's no such thing in our industry. Either you're compliant or you're not. So
Yeah, it's a
this is a
binary thing.
yeah, so this is something that is really going to come to a head very quickly. The insurance industries are now getting wind of like a pattern here. They're seeing,
Hmm.
3 to 4 claims a month. Not always loss of life, not always a home explosion, but 3 or 4 claims a month of tanks that are corroding and causing some sort of damage. So the insurance companies are now looking at it from the standpoint of like, look, we're the ones doing the payout. We're going to start changing our how we operate, regardless of federal regulation, regardless of
Hmm.
state regulation. If you want insurance and you want your rates to be reasonable, you're going to have to start doing something different, whether it be yearly checks and or you're going to get a compliance system like ours that would do
Yeah.
something like that for you. So I would think that's going to be one of those big changes in the industry right now. If I have to talk about an industry as a whole away from Mopica, I think one of the biggest pushes forward will be um, how we communicate, how we have devices out in the field, whether it be trucks, tanks, sensors, what doesn't matter. Right now, we're relying on Wi Fi, we're relying on cellular, and we
Hmm.
started to play around with satellite, right? What we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of LTE to satellite communication happening over the next, I'm going to tell you, 12 to 24 months. We're already seeing it now with iPhones where they can make emergency calls via satellite.
Hmm.
We're going to start seeing if you don't have a terrestrial tower available to you, whether you're an AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon user, will you be able to make a phone call over satellite? Yes. We're going to see that push, I think, in a big way over the next couple of years, and that's going to change really how we play the game. I think it's also the price of that is going to be so reasonable that it's going to be like it's no different than playing for cellular. So why not? Now I don't have any boundaries of where I can operate and who I can operate with. Along with that, we're going to see some new technology like Bluetooth to satellite communication, which we're already working on, and we've already working with a partner who's proven that can also work. Well, that will change how we design products going forward because in any of our devices, whether it be ours or any other IoT device out there, the biggest power draw is your transmitter, and LTE sucks power like nobody's business. If
Hmm.
we can go Bluetooth to satellite communication, that changes how we design products from the ground up, changes our power consumption, and then turns around and what's the ROI for the customer? Now we're talking about a device possibly that's out in the field that doesn't need batteries changed for 10 years. So I think those are going to be the two biggest changes, I think, short term and long term over, you know, and by the way, with that, that's still going to fall in line with the thread of more adoption of automation and integrated systems over the next 2 to 3 years.
I was going to say, like on the innovation side, seems like insurance companies would be quite interested in your sensor technology, right? Or at least they
You know,
almost made it mandatory for insurance coverage.
well, there's really like 5 to 7 insurance providers in our industry as a whole from the fuel perspective. We work with about 5 of them currently, of which they've all shared with us like, look, there's a lot of risk here. And when there's a lot of risk, and what we're seeing is a lot of the tanks that are pre 2006, which didn't have any regulation pre
Hmm.
2006, um,
Yeah.
those tanks are out there are ticking time bombs. They don't have
Yeah.
anode bags. They don't have protection. So those things are starting to come due, which is why that's pushing this so hard from an insurance perspective.
What are you best in the world at?
Oh, I put it this way. I refuse to use the term best in anything, right? I think by we try to stay humble. We got a lot of bright people on the team, some really dynamic engineers, great customer service people. So I hate to say that we're the best at anything, but I can tell you what we're good at. What we're good at is we're good at building and designing quality solutions. I think when we sit down to the table and we come up with ideas and thinking outside the box, um, when we bring something out to market, because we're also engineers, engineers are trained to design something the right way.
Hmm.
Engineers are not trained from the ground up to say, hey, I need you to make the most efficient thing possible. I need you to make the cheapest thing possible. That's not how we're trained in college or anything else. We're trained to design a solution. So I think when we go to, and what we do best is when we design something, we really design it for quality. We design it for longevity. We design it for reliability. We do not necessarily start off with the initial filter of how can we make the cheapest product possible. And I think because we are privately owned and I have three other partners and we all share the same mindset, it's not always about a race to the bottom. It's not. I truly believe that if you make bargain products and you make bargain decisions, you get bargain outcomes, right?
Right.
Um, so I think people are willing to pay a little bit more for something of quality. We've seen that in every other industry in the world, whether it be cars or TVs or what have you. So I think one of the things that we're really good at is that when we design something, when we bring it to market, it is something that is very, very solid. We don't use um, our customers per se to be our R&D. We do have a very tight network of marketers who do user acceptance testing for us. But when we bring a product to market, it's already been in the field for 3 years, seeing real world conditions with real world marketers, beating the hell out of these things so that when we come to market with something and we make statements about battery consumption, reliability, and longevity, um, it means something. Versus,
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of products enter the market where, oh, we got a product this year. Next year, there's 2.0 of that same product, and it's not a tremendous change in the product. It's a few changes, right? And what that indicates to me as an engineer is that guess what? You're not doing the R&D like you should. You're using your customers to do a lot of the R&D, and you're getting all this feedback of things that you would have learned had you really done a true development life cycle on a product or a service. It doesn't really matter. Um, so I think from that perspective, um, that's a real separator for us, and I think it's something that we do very, very well. And to back that up, I think it's just the track record in our product.
I was going to say you're the best at being humble.
Put it this way, I did an interview the other day, and they're like, "Wow, you're a genius," and I'm like, "We're not geniuses." I think we're very bright as a group, right?
Hmm.
Everybody brings something to the table. There's no one particular person in our organization that really drives innovation. It comes from everybody, and
It's a
and
shared
and we
value. Yeah.
yeah, and we welcome it from everybody. It's not just our development team from hardware or software, our support team, our warehouse team. If you have an idea, speak up. If you got feedback, speak up. We want to hear it. We want everyone to feel that they have some sense of ownership in what we do because they do. Whether they choose to flex it or not, that's up to them. But the way we kind of operate is if you don't, I'm going to pull you onto the field. I'm going to make you try to interact that way because I want you to feel comfortable doing that on a regular basis. There's no such thing as a bad idea.
Sometimes there
Oh, put it this way, I like to tell them, you know what, you are correct about that, but I just like to refer to those as those are ideas that they're just not in the right time and place.
Yeah, they
That's
haven't
all.
cooked enough. Yeah.
That's right.
We're coming up on time here. I want to be mindful. Obviously, you have work to do, I'm sure. So, two more questions for you. The first question would be, what would you say keeps you up at night about the future?
Well, I think what keeps me up at night really is my customers. I worry about my customers a lot. Um, and as I said before, there is more medium to small players than there are big players in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't worry about the big players as much. They've got their technology teams and loads of analysts and strategy people and what have you. But the medium and smaller marketers out there don't. And I worry about them. I worry about vendors not building for those problems, right? I worry about them getting lost in the shuffle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worried that we're going to end up building things, and whether it be software or hardware, that is out of reach for the majority of the customers that we're really trying to service, right? And we do have products out there now, back office products, where guess what? We have small marketers like we just can't afford that. It would be the right solution for them, but they're not big enough, right? And it's not a maturity level. It's really purely down to finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I worry about them. I also worry about whether or not they're getting good guidance. I would say in our industry over the last 3 or 4 years, we've started to see a rise of what I would call technology talking heads in our industry. We've got people who talk about safety. And then we just have recognized people. We have recognized people who talk about strategy and legal stuff in our industry, but we haven't really had a rise in people that we can look to and say, look, these are SMEs in technology, just general technology, right? And who's going to help me figure out what to do next, right? And so that's what probably keeps me up at night the most, is whether or not people are going to be able to get that guidance or be able to put away some of the ego and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what the future is bringing. I need help, right? So that's what I worry about most. And that's why we do work with everybody, but a lot of the time we spend a lot of time with our smaller and medium marketers. One, because I think they need the most attention.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with how successful they are or not. It just comes down to maturity level, right? And if you look at the history of most of those medium to small marketers, well, they were somebody who worked for somebody else, who decided one day to go into business for themselves. They bought a truck, they bought a storage tank,
Mm-hmm.
and off they went. That doesn't make them experts in strategy, doesn't make them experts in technology, and doesn't make them experts in analytics, which are all going to be important pieces of the puzzle going forward to be successful in our industry. So that's what I really worry about. So besides us trying to sell products, we also try to give guidance. And we work with our customers to help them figure out other solutions for back offices and routing packages, even though they're not things that we sell and they're not necessarily with partners that we work with. The idea is somebody needs to be in the marketer's corner, helping them, guide them, and be that sounding board from a technology standpoint.
So you're not worried about AI killing you?
No, no. Put it this way, I've been in technology. I've been working with AI for almost 10 years now at this point. And one thing that people have the misconception of, they think when they think AI, they think, oh, robots who can talk and interact and whatever. But there's so many different levels of AI, and in a way, we've all been using AI for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Algorithms are a very primitive form of AI. What we're really going to be looking at over the next, I'm going to tell you, the next 4 to 7 years is really more machine learning. We're going to see a lot of machine learning, which is a form of AI, but the machine learning is going to be more about, hey, the more data I'm getting, the more I am sure about the things I'm telling you, right? When that's what we're going to start seeing more in systems, where the AI is going to say, hey, based on what we're seeing, if you do X, you should get Y as an outcome, right? And it's going to allow marketers to turn around and play the game of like, hey, let me make the change, let me see what happens. And they're going to fine tune their businesses. We're going to see some AI streamline, and AI is just another name for some automation as well, which we're going to see some streamlining of dispatch services, and we're going to need less people to do that, but we're going to need people then to do oversight, right? And taste that soup to make sure that the outcomes that are coming off through that automation are at the level we need them to be successful, right?
Yep.
So I don't see AI as being a real threat. I see it as it's going to be something that's going to be tough to adopt in our industry, just because of people's current misconceptions of it. But I see that's going to be something that's just going to enhance what we're kind of doing going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once marketers embrace more technology and we start using automation as the term more than AI,
Hmm.
it's easier to swallow and easier to understand for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, AI is used, in very generic ways at the moment.
Everybody's slinging it around because it's a buzzword.
Yeah,
And honestly, very few people I've talked to who say, "Oh, we have AI." I say, "Okay, tell me about your AI. What level is it at? What is it
yeah.
really doing?" And that's where the conversation falls apart. But I think that's
They
where
have
we
Copilot on SharePoint.
right. Or their thing is, well, I've used GPT, Chat GPT, right? That's AI.
Yeah.
Sure it is, but that's not exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about AI and systems. We're talking about systems that will make some decisions for you that you allow based on
Hmm.
knowledge and over time and what have you. And then there's going to be systems where the AI is going to come back and make recommendations. You're still going to have to make the decision on what you
Yeah.
want to implement, but we're going to see more of that, I think, in the next couple of years.
Last question. In the industry that you serve, what would you say is the biggest blocker to innovation? Would it be technology, resources, or culture?
I think it's culture, honestly. I think it's really a cultural thing, right? We're dealing with an industry that has been aging for a long, long time.
Hmm.
We have, but at the same time, we have a lot of people who have longevity, right? Where how many people can you turn to these days and say, oh yeah, I've been in this industry doing this kind of role for the last 50 years, or it's generational, right? You don't see that kind of commitment in a lot of other verticals outside of fuel. But at the same time, it's a hindrance, right? Because it goes back to that mindset of this is how I was trained, or this is how I was just told to be doing it. Um, so I think it's a cultural thing, but I think that cultural thing is changing because we do have people who are like, look, I get it, and I need to move in that direction. Then we have some people who say, look, I still don't get it, but my customers want it. So regardless of what I believe or anything, my customers want these type of features and this type of functionality, so I have to embrace it, right? And then there's the younger generations that are moving up into our industry who are, once again, they're bringing the why are we doing it? They're asking the
Hmm.
questions, which is good, and they're bringing expectations, which I think are reasonable to our industry in terms of why can't I have it on my phone? Why can't I see it from a
Why
computer
can't I
anywhere
have
in
it
the
on?
world?
Yeah.
I like
Why
to
is
tell
this a
people
fax?
we're in the age, I call it we're Amazon voyeurs pretty much, right? Like we all want to see how the sausage is made. We want to watch.
Hmm.
That's why reality television is so popular. That's why FedEx allows you to see where the truck is, on the delivery. Like, oh, I'm 3 stops away and I see the icon moving around. Does it really change the delivery? No, but I want to watch it, right?
I want to know what's going on at all times.
So I think with the younger generation moving in, they're bringing that mindset, that expectation of, if
Yeah,
I
it's
can
really an
see my
expectation.
thermostat on my phone or change my lights or start my car from my phone, why can't I see my tank? Why can't I do
Yeah,
this? Why?
yeah, yeah.
So it's just natural.
Well, Kevin, this was great. Very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for jumping on with me.
Oh, I appreciate it, Phil. Anytime. This was a great use of time, and I hope it provided some value.